I used to work night security at a small private hospital just outside of Tulsa. Not one of those giant city hospitals with hundreds of staff and bright white hallways everywhere. This place was older. 2 floors, faded paint, a parking lot that always smelled faintly like wet asphalt and cigarettes after midnight. Most nights were quiet. I'd clock in around 10:45 p.m., pour burnt coffee into a foam cup, and spend 12 hours walking the halls, making sure nobody stole equipment or wandered in through the ER entrance. The hospital mostly handled long-term patients, recovery cases, elderly people, physical rehab. Nothing exciting ever happened. That was why I took the job. At the time, I'd just gone through a breakup. My sleep schedule was destroyed. I liked the silence, the routine. The empty halls made it easier not to think. Every night followed the same pattern. At 11 p.m., the day nurses left. At 12:30 a.m., I checked the west stairwell. At 1 a.m., I walked through the rehabilitation wing and made sure the side entrances were locked. At 2:15, I usually sat in the security office watching old camera feeds while eating gas station food. Then sunrise came, simple. But around late November, things started feeling wrong. It began with room 208. That room sat at the far end of the second-floor recovery wing. Corner room, dim lighting. The overhead bulb outside the door flickered constantly, no matter how many times maintenance replaced it. The patient inside was an older man named Walter. At least I think that was his name. I barely saw him. He mostly slept. One of the nurses told me he'd had a stroke and rarely spoke anymore. The weird part was the call button. Almost every night around 2:13 a.m., the patient call light for room 208 turned on. Exactly 2:13. The first few times, I didn't think much of it. Nurses responded to patient calls constantly, but after a week, one of the overnight nurses pulled me aside near the vending machines. "You ever notice that room?" she asked quietly. I shrugged. 208? She nodded. "That guy can't press the button." I laughed a little. "What do you mean he can't? He can barely move his arms." I remember the way she said it. Not joking, not dramatic, just tired. Then she walked away. That night, I watched the hallway camera at exactly 2:13 a.m. Sure enough, the call light turned on. Nothing moved inside the room. No nurse entered beforehand. No shadow near the bed. Just the light. I told myself electrical issues made more sense. Old building, bad wiring. Still, I started avoiding that hallway whenever I could. A few nights later, we had freezing rain, the kind that coated the roads in a thin layer of glass. I remember hearing sleet tapping against the windows while I sat in the security office trying to stay awake. At 2:13 a.m., the call light came on again. I sighed and grabbed my flashlight. The overnight nurse station was short-staffed that night, so sometimes I checked rooms myself before notifying anyone. The second floor felt colder than usual. Not freezing, just uncomfortable. Like someone had cracked open a window somewhere. As I walked toward 208, I noticed the hallway lights seemed dimmer near the end of the corridor. That's another thing about old hospitals. At night, they never fully go dark. There's always some glow, some machine beeping, some distant TV playing quietly. But that hallway felt dead. No sound, no movement. I stopped outside the room. The call light above the door blinked softly. I knocked once. Nothing. Then I pushed the door open. The TV inside was on low volume. Some old Western movie. Black and white horses crossing a river. The patient lay in bed facing the window, completely still. "Sir?" I whispered. No response. I stepped closer, and that's when I noticed the bathroom door. It was open, just slightly, dark inside. I don't know why that bothered me so much. Maybe because I knew the patient couldn't walk alone. Maybe because the bathroom light should have been on. I stood there listening. At first, nothing. Then I heard breathing, slow, wet sounding, coming from inside the bathroom. Every hair on my arm stood up immediately. I remember gripping the flashlight so tightly my hand hurt. "Hello?" The breathing stopped, not slowly, instantly. Like whoever was making the sound realized I'd heard them. I waited. Nothing moved. Then from behind me, the TV volume suddenly increased by itself. Loud. So loud it made me jump. The horses on screen screamed through static. I spun around. The patient was sitting upright in bed, just staring at me. I froze. I swear to God, I hadn't heard him move. 1 second he'd been lying down. Now he was sitting there, eyes open, mouth hanging slightly, watching me. The TV flickered beside him. Then he slowly raised one hand and pointed toward the bathroom. I couldn't breathe for a second. Not because I thought something supernatural was happening. It was worse than that. It felt real, physical, like there was an actual person standing in that bathroom waiting for me to look again. I backed toward the door immediately. "Need a nurse in 208, I said into my radio. My voice cracked. The patient never blinked. He kept pointing. I left the room before the nurse arrived. I didn't even look into the bathroom again. The nurse checked the room 5 minutes later. Nobody inside. Nothing unusual. The patient had apparently fallen back asleep. She looked annoyed that I'd called her over. After that, I avoided entering 208 alone. But things got stranger. A week later, another security guard named Luis covered my shift while I attended my cousin's wedding. The next night, he pulled me aside before clocking out. "You ever hear noises upstairs?" I felt my stomach tighten. "What kind of noises?" He rubbed his eyes. "Like somebody dragging shoes on the floor." I didn't answer. He continued. "Second floor hallway around 2 in the morning. Thought it was a patient wandering around, but nobody was there." Then he paused. "And room 208 had its bathroom sink running." I stared at him. "Nobody inside?" "No." He gave a nervous laugh. "That room's creepy as hell." December came. Snow piled along the curbs outside the hospital. Christmas decorations went up around reception. Cheap plastic garland taped to walls. The weirdness continued. Sometimes the hallway camera near 208 would cut to static for a few seconds around 2 a.m. Sometimes nurses reported hearing knocking sounds from empty rooms. One patient claimed a man stood beside her bed every night around the same time. Administration blamed medication confusion. Maybe they were right, but nobody liked that wing anymore. Then came the night I quit. It was December 19th. I remember because I'd bought my mother a coffee maker for Christmas earlier that day. The roads were icy, barely any cars outside. Around 1:50 a.m., a nurse named Karen came into the security office looking pale. She asked me to walk upstairs with her. "There's somebody in 208, she whispered. "What do you mean?" "The patient says someone keeps opening the bathroom door." I felt cold immediately. When we reached the second floor, the hallway lights were flickering again. Karen knocked first. No response. Then she slowly opened the door. The patient was asleep. TV off. Room dark except for the hallway light behind us. Everything looked normal. Karen sighed with relief. Then we heard it, a soft knock. From inside the bathroom. 3 taps, close together. Karen looked at me instantly. I remember neither of us moved for maybe 3 seconds. Then another knock came. Slower this time. I stepped backward immediately. Karen whispered, "Hello?" No answer. Then the bathroom door creaked open another inch. Not fast. Slow enough that you could hear every little movement of the hinge. Karen actually walked toward it. I grabbed her arm. "No." I don't know why I said it like that. Maybe because something deep down was screaming at me not to look inside. The room suddenly smelled strange, like damp clothes or wet dirt. Then the patient spoke. First time I'd ever heard his voice. Quiet, weak. "Don't let him stand near the bed." Karen turned pale. "What?" The old man kept staring toward the bathroom. Then he whispered something else. I only caught part of it. "Comes in when you look away." At that exact moment, the bathroom light switched on. Not flickered, not sparked. It just turned on. Bright yellow light filled the crack of the doorway, and across the bathroom wall, we saw a shadow move, not ours, too tall. It crossed the wall fast, like someone stepping sideways out of view. Karen screamed. I backed into the hallway so hard I nearly fell. Then the bathroom door slammed shut. The entire second floor went silent. No machines, no footsteps, nothing. Just Karen crying quietly beside me. A few nurses came running after hearing the scream. Maintenance searched the bathroom. Nobody there. No open vents. No second exit. Nothing. Administration later blamed stress, electrical problems. fatigue. I quit 2 days later. Here's the part that still bothers me. About 6 months after I left, I ran into Luis at a gas station. We talked for a while. Eventually, I asked him about the hospital. He got quiet. Then he told me room 208 had been sealed off during renovations after repeated complaints from patients. Apparently, people kept hearing someone breathing in the bathroom, mostly around 2 in the morning. Then he said something I still think about sometimes. The patient from 208 had actually died 3 days before my first night hearing the call light. Nobody ever corrected the room number in the system. According to hospital records, the room should have been empty the entire time. This happened during the coldest winter I'd ever experienced in northern Michigan. Not movie snow, real snow. The kind that buried cars overnight and made the trees crack in the distance from the weight of ice. At the time, I was 28 and recently divorced. My son, Eli, had just turned 6. We lived alone in a rental house near the edge of a small town called Hartwell. Quiet place, one gas station, one grocery store. Long stretches of road with nothing but frozen fields and dead trees. I'd taken the house because it was cheap. That should have been my first warning. The landlord said the previous tenant had left suddenly in the middle of January the year before. Didn't explain why, just abandoned half the furniture and disappeared. At the time, I didn't care. I was exhausted financially and emotionally. My divorce had drained everything out of me. I worked morning shifts at a pharmacy 20 minutes away, and all I wanted was someplace quiet where Eli could sleep peacefully. For the first 2 weeks, things felt normal. The house itself was old but manageable. Creaking pipes, drafty windows, a long, narrow hallway that seemed darker than the rest of the place, no matter how many lights I turned on. Eli's bedroom sat at the back of the house, facing the woods. That mattered later. Every night followed the same routine. Dinner around 7, cartoons until 8, brush teeth. Read one story, lights out by 8:45. Then I'd sit downstairs watching TV while snow hit the windows. Simple, but around mid-January, Eli started waking up at strange times, usually around 2 or 3 in the morning. At first, he'd just quietly walk into my room holding his blanket. I had a bad dream. Normal kid stuff, but then the dreams became specific. There's somebody outside my window. The first time he said it, I smiled and walked him back to bed. Nobody was there, just snow. The woods behind the house looked black under the moonlight, but that was it. I told him tree branches probably scared him. He nodded, but he didn't look convinced. A few nights later, he woke me again. This time he was crying. He keeps standing there. I remember feeling irritation before fear. I was tired, working full shifts, barely sleeping already. So I walked straight into his room, determined to prove nothing was outside. The snow outside reflected enough moonlight that I could see most of the backyard clearly. No footprints, no movement, no person. I even unlocked the back door and checked with a flashlight. Nothing but freezing wind and snow crunching beneath my boots. I tucked Eli back into bed and told him everything was okay. Then he said something strange. "He hides when you come." That sentence stayed with me. The next morning, I noticed something near the back fence. Footprints. At least I thought they were footprints. They were partially filled with snow already, but they led from the tree line toward the back of the house, then stopped, not turned around. Stopped, like whoever made them had vanished. I told myself it was probably deer tracks distorted by weather. Still, I locked every door that night. A week later, the power went out during a storm. That's when things started getting worse. The entire neighborhood went dark around 11 p.m. No TV, no internet. Nothing but wind outside and the occasional groaning sound from ice hitting the roof. Eli slept in my room that night because the house felt too cold. Around 2:17 a.m., I woke up needing water. The moment I stepped into the hallway, I heard it. A soft tapping sound. 3 taps. Pause. 3 more. Coming from Eli's bedroom window. I stopped immediately. Every part of my body went tight. Tap, tap, tap. The sound was soft, deliberate. Not branches, not ice. Someone tapping glass. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. The hallway felt freezing. I remember my socks brushing against the hardwood floor while I slowly moved toward Eli's room. The tapping stopped the second I reached the doorway. His room was dark except for faint moonlight through the curtains. I swept the flashlight toward the window. Nothing. Then I noticed the curtain moving slightly. Not from wind. The window was closed. Something had disturbed it. I walked closer carefully. The flashlight beam shook in my hand, and then I saw it, a shape standing outside near the tree line. Tall, completely still, too far away to see details, but definitely a person. The beam hit him for only a second before he stepped behind a tree. Gone. I felt adrenaline hit instantly, not fear anymore, pure panic. I called the police immediately. An officer arrived around 30 minutes later because of the storm. By then, snowfall had covered most tracks outside. Still, he searched the property. Nothing. No signs of forced entry, no vehicle nearby. He told me it was probably some teenager messing around. I wanted to believe him, but after he left, I noticed something that made me feel sick. Eli's bedroom window had handprints on the outside glass. Not full prints, just fingertips. Like someone had been leaning there looking inside. After that night, Eli refused to sleep alone. I couldn't blame him. The next few days felt tense. Every sound outside bothered me. The woods behind the house suddenly felt enormous. At night, I'd catch myself staring through the kitchen window expecting to see someone standing there. Nothing ever appeared. Then came February 2nd. I remember the date because it was my ex-wife's birthday. A snowstorm hit hard that night. Visibility near zero. Roads nearly shut down. Eli fell asleep beside me downstairs while I watched old movies to stay awake. Around 1:40 a.m., I heard footsteps outside on the porch. Slow, heavy, crunch, crunch, crunch. My entire body froze. The footsteps stopped directly outside the front door. Then silence. I muted the TV immediately. Eli stayed asleep. For maybe 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then came a knock. One knock. Very soft, not aggressive, almost polite. I didn't move. Another knock followed. Then a voice. "Excuse me?" Male voice. Calm. Middle-aged, maybe. I stayed completely still. The voice came again. My car slid into the ditch down the road. "Can I use your phone?" Something about the way he spoke felt wrong immediately. Too calm, too rehearsed. Most people stranded during a blizzard sound desperate. This guy sounded relaxed. I slowly looked through the peephole. At first I saw nobody, then movement. A man standing off to the side of the porch where I couldn't fully see him, wearing a dark winter coat. Tall, very thin, his face mostly hidden beneath a hat. "I can see your TV on," he said softly. The fear I felt at that moment was overwhelming, not because of what he said, because he said it quietly, like he knew he shouldn't scare me, like he was trying very hard to sound normal. I backed away from the door silently and grabbed my phone. The second I started dialing 911, the doorknob moved, slowly, just once, testing it. Eli woke up immediately. "Mom," I whispered for him to stay quiet. Then the knocking started again. Harder now, not frantic, rhythmic. Boom, boom, boom. I heard snow falling from the porch roof with each hit. The dispatcher answered while I locked myself in the downstairs bathroom with Eli. I remember holding him so tightly he started crying. The operator stayed on the line while police drove over. During those 10 minutes, we heard footsteps moving around the outside of the house. Back porch, side windows, slow walking. At one point, somebody stopped outside the bathroom window. I heard breathing, actual breathing, close enough that the glass fogged slightly. Eli buried his face into my chest. Then the person whispered something. I only caught part of it. "Just wanted to look at him." I swear to God, that's what he said. The police arrived moments later. The footsteps stopped instantly. Officers searched the property. Again, they found nobody. But this time there were tracks, clear boot prints circling the entire house repeatedly, and near Eli's bedroom window. More fingerprints. The officer asked if I knew anyone who might target my son. That question made me feel physically ill. I moved out 3 days later. Didn't care about losing the deposit, didn't care about the lease. I packed essentials and left. But this isn't the part that still keeps me awake. About 8 months later, I got a call from a detective. He asked if I'd ever reported a suspicious man around my rental property. Apparently another woman had moved into that same house after me. Single mother, one child. Her son disappeared during a snowstorm in March. No signs of forced entry, no witnesses, nothing. The only thing police found outside were footprints near the back window leading toward the woods. Just one set, like someone had walked up slowly and left carrying something too light to drag through the snow. The last story happened during my senior year of high school. Out of everything I've experienced, this is the one that still bothers me the most. Not because anyone died, not because anyone got hurt, because to this day, nobody can explain what happened, and there were too many witnesses for it to be dismissed as imagination. It happened during late October. The weather had started turning cold, but winter hadn't arrived yet. The trees around the school were mostly orange and brown, and every morning the parking lot was covered with a thin layer of frost. I attended a fairly normal public high school. Nothing special. About 800 students, 2 floors, long hallways lined with lockers. The kind of place where everybody knew everybody else's business. Our school had been built in the late 1970s. Over the years, new sections had been added onto the building, creating strange layouts where hallways didn't always make sense. One of those sections contained Classroom 14. That room sat at the end of an isolated corridor near the old science wing. Most students rarely went there. Only a few elective classes used it. The hallway itself always felt strange. Not haunted, just forgotten. The lights buzzed constantly. The floor tiles were older than the rest of the school, and the corridor was unusually narrow. You felt it every time you walked through there, like the walls sat too close together. I had a photography class in room 14 every Wednesday afternoon. Our teacher was Mr. Lawson, middle-aged, easygoing, the type of teacher who let students listen to music while working. The semester had been completely normal until one Thursday afternoon. That was when Emily heard the voice. At least that's how the story started. We were working on editing projects after school around 4:45 p.m. Most students had already left the building. Only 7 of us remained inside the classroom. Mr. Lawson was grading papers near his desk. The rest of us were scattered around the room working on computers. The hallway outside was completely quiet. Then Emily suddenly removed one of her headphones. "You guys hear that?" Nobody answered. "Hear what?" someone asked. She looked confused. "A guy talking." We all stopped. Nothing. The room was silent except for computer fans. Mr. Lawson glanced up. "Probably custodians." Emily shrugged and went back to work. That should have been the end of it. But the next week it happened again. This time I heard it too. Class ended around 4:30 p.m. A few of us stayed late finishing projects. I was sitting closest to the classroom door. At approximately 5 p.m., I heard somebody speaking outside in the hallway. A male voice, very low, like 2 people having a conversation several rooms away. At first, I assumed it was another teacher. Then I realized something. The voice never changed position. It wasn't moving. It sounded like someone standing in one spot, speaking continuously. I opened the classroom door. The hallway was empty, completely empty. No students, no teachers, no custodians, nothing. Yet the voice continued. I could still hear it, faint, mumbling, like a distant radio. Then it stopped. Immediately, the second I stepped into the hallway. I remember getting chills, not dramatic movie chills, real ones, the kind that start in your stomach. I went back inside. The voice didn't return. Over the next 2 weeks, more students reported hearing it. Always after school, always near classroom 14, always male. Nobody could understand the words, only the sound of someone talking. Mr. Lawson eventually reported it to administration. They checked nearby rooms. Nothing. No speakers, no intercom issues, no obvious explanation. Then things escalated. One rainy afternoon in November, our photography group stayed late preparing for an exhibition. There were 9 of us inside the room. Rain hammered against the windows. The sky outside had already turned dark. Around 5:20 p.m., the voice returned. Louder than before, everyone heard it. Conversation stopped instantly. We all looked at each other. The voice sounded like it was directly outside the classroom, mumbling, speaking steadily. Mr. Lawson stood up. "You hear that?" Several students nodded. The voice continued, low, male, unintelligible. Mr. Lawson walked toward the door. The room had become completely silent. Nobody moved, nobody laughed, nobody made jokes. Something about it felt wrong. The teacher opened the door. The hallway was empty. The voice stopped instantly. The timing was perfect. Too perfect. Mr. Lawson stepped outside. Nothing. He walked 20 feet down the corridor. Still nothing. Then he returned. The second he closed the classroom door, the voice came back. Louder. Every student heard it. I watched the color leave Mr. Lawson's face. That was the first time I realized he was genuinely uncomfortable. The next day, maintenance checked the walls. Nothing. Electrical systems. Nothing. Ventilation ducts. Nothing. The school eventually blamed old plumbing. Nobody believed that explanation. Then came the night of the incident. The night everybody still talks about. It happened on a Friday, late November. A basketball game was scheduled that evening, which meant many students stayed after school. Around 6 p.m., our photography club met in classroom 14 to finish preparations for a display. There were 12 students, Mr. Lawson, and one assistant principal. The assistant principal was there because administration wanted to personally investigate the strange reports. The voice hadn't appeared all week. Everyone expected nothing to happen. For the first hour, everything felt normal. People worked, talked, laughed. Outside, the gym echoed with basketball practice. Then around 7:12 p.m., the gym lights briefly flickered. Nobody paid attention. A minute later, the hallway lights outside room 14 dimmed, just slightly, then returned. The assistant principal made a joke about the aging building. People laughed. Then we heard it. Not the voice. A knock. 3 slow knocks, coming from the classroom door. Everyone looked up. The assistant principal immediately stood. "Come in." No answer. Another 3 knocks. Slow. Measured. Almost identical spacing. Mr. Lawson opened the door. Nobody stood outside. The hallway was empty. Every single student could see it. No person, no movement, nothing. The assistant principal stepped into the hallway himself. He checked both directions. Clear. Then the voice began. For the first time, it wasn't outside. It was inside. Inside the classroom. Every person froze. The voice sounded close. Unbelievably close. Like someone standing among us. Talking quietly. Male. Low. Continuous. The sound seemed to come from everywhere. No source. No direction. Just there. Students began standing up from their chairs. One girl started crying. The assistant principal looked genuinely terrified. Then something happened that I still can't explain. The voice suddenly became clear. Not fully. Just enough. Enough to understand a sentence. I heard it. Mr. Lawson heard it. Several students heard it. The voice said, "Don't leave him alone." The room went dead silent. Then all the computers shut off at once. Every screen, instantly.